What's up, everybody? It's Damp. I wanted to make a few videos for you all on some of the things I've learned in my first like 2,500, 3,000 battles on World of Tanks, because I do think it's an awesome game now that I've gotten into it. My initial frustration with the learning curve was pretty huge. So, what I wanted to do is make a kind of a video series on how to help some newer players and hopefully not make the same mistakes that I did, because I made a ton of them and I'm paying for it now when I look at my stats. With my first probably 1,500 to 2,000 battles, I really struggled. So I kind of broke down 10 things I think that were really important when you first start, and I'll break out the others in additional videos moving forward. I got some feedback from some people on Reddit, so everybody on Reddit who gave me some feedback, thank you very much. And I really went to the World of Tanks Reddit and just said, tell me what you guys would add to this, because I have some ideas. So I got some really good ideas. So I'll be adding some more stuff to it over the next few weeks, because this has been the main game I've been playing while waiting on Darkest Dungeon to update. So without further ado, here we go. So to start, like the first tip, really that I've really noticed myself making the biggest impact on how much I enjoy the game is learn the best times to play for your server. Um, for me, I primarily play on US East, and the time, obviously, you can see that up here. Primarily, I play on US East, and the best time I found for myself as I'm in the Eastern time zone is to play Saturday and Sunday mornings from like, I don't know, 7 a.m. until about 12 or 1. I find that I have a much more enjoyable time playing then. I tend to win more games, and overall, I tend to see a lot less um, bots or really inexperienced players. Not that I'm very good, but usually you can tell when somebody just suicides across the map that they're probably not out to actually try and play the game. They just, kind of want to be a troll. So that's the time that I see um, I actually enjoy the game the most. That's really I, the biggest thing I'd taken away from my first few thousand games has been really trying to force games late at night and not taking breaks when I got frustrated was let me to really hate the game and just get to the point where I was so frustrated I just wanted to quit based off either matchmaking or whatever. So that's really my first tip, and one of the biggest is find a time that you can enjoy playing the game, and I think that will help you the most for your longevity within the game. The second thing is initially when you start off with your tier 1 tanks, you're going to get a crew that's 100% for a lot of different countries. Initially, I dismissed most of these to get barracks for some of the newer tanks that I began to get. So, my initial feedback to you guys when it comes to crew when you're first starting the game is when you get these tier 1 crews that are at 100%, don't dismiss them. You can respec them later on when you begin to acquire some gold. Um, but they're already going to come like preloaded, ready to go, ready to acquire almost the first crew skill. And I dismissed them in a lot of them and ended up buying them back later on. So don't dismiss the original crew. Try and keep them in the barracks, even if you have to buy some space. It's probably worth the investment. You'll need it down the road anyway. And with that comes like the second thing along that is you probably want to invest a little bit in the game when you first enter. Not necessarily on premium time. Check out the game and see if you like it before you invest in premium time. But just to get some garage space and some crew barracks, I would say initially invest maybe 10 or 15 bucks in some gold. Enough to get you aligned with those things. Don't buy a premium tank. Feel the game out. See how you like it. If you do decide to buy one later on, wait till they're on sale. A lot of them are on sale really often, or you can bundle them up. But that goes along saying with the 100% initial crew. So moving on to the next one, is kind of we go on to the next thing is these next ones I'm not going to make separate videos on them for, but learning how to angle your tank, learning how to side scrape, and learning how to maybe do reverse angling or hull down. Those are all terms that I really wasn't familiar with my first probably 500 to 600 battles. Wasn't worried about it because it was primarily in lights and medium tanks. But those are really, really important to learn, and the sooner you can learn them, typically the better it will it'll be for you, even if your particular tank doesn't benefit. When you're playing a light tank, you get shot one or two times in your first few tiers, it doesn't matter. But learning about that and when to shoot and when to maybe drive around somebody versus trying to pin them in the front based off how they're angled is a big deal. So learn those. There's a lot of different videos on those. I'm not really not going to put one out, but learn all about those. That's really important. I think it can help a lot of your sanity early on, especially as you transition into some of the bulkier, medium, and heavier tanks. What goes along with that is learn some of the weak spots of tanks. Learn about where to shoot machine gun ports like this, the lower glacis plate here, and then obviously the commander's hatch up top. Those are, generally speaking, some of the most beneficial and the quickest ones to learn, just me explaining it to you. But pretty much any flat spot on a tank's pretty easy to pen. You want to avoid the angled areas for the most part. But, if you were to, like if we just pull out the T-29, the turret armor on the T-29 is really good, but it's got this machine gun port here that's really a weak spot. You can hit lower glacis plate. The side of the hull's weak. And the commander's hatch. So sometimes this spot's really hard, especially when you don't have equipment or a really good crew. But I always look for these ports, and when in doubt, track something. Hopefully somebody can hit it that can do damage, and at least you'll get that assisted damage. Moving on to the next one. Save for the sales when it comes to buying like your equipment, modules, not necessarily, but the equipment and the consumables. Save for the sales and buy a ton of them when it happens. And then some of the advice I got on Reddit was you can actually sell it back if you don't plan on using it and make some money on it. I personally never do that, so I don't know. I'm kind of speaking out of turn without trying it, but another piece of that is you can always sell back your modules of the tanks that you don't use too often. Like if for this Chaffee, if we went through and upgraded everything here. So let's take a look at the Chaffee. Like if we upgraded to this turret, we could sell this one back. If we upgraded to this gun, we could sell this one back, etc. So just kind of know that you can sell some of that stuff back when you're strapped for cash. Moving on. So when I first started the game, one thing that I didn't really do a lot of is I didn't invest in the APCR or the heat rounds. I really kind of thought, that's kind of pay to win, and it was against how I played the game, and I usually don't do a lot of pay to win type stuff or, invest a lot of money in a free to play game. And I quickly learned after probably battle 1500 or 2000 that I was an absolute idiot for not doing that. People use it. It's there to help you. It's part of the game. It's the way it's built into it. You're going to need to do it in certain situations. So as I've gotten more experienced in the game, one of the things I like to do is if I have a tank that I'm grinding and I really want to make an impact on my daily double or daily triple, whatever it might be, I shoot premium rounds out of that until I win my first daily double. I found that that's been really effective for me. It could save me 10 to 20 minutes out of my life to gain that same amount of experience back, just by knowing I'm going to pen or knowing I'm going to do the most amount of damage possible by shooting either APCR or heat. It's just my personal opinion. Some people frown upon always shooting premium rounds, but the simple fact of the matter is it's part of the game, and it's something that really you're going to need to do it. But as you're new, I would say primarily focus on daily doubles when you need to get the most XP out of it. Moving on to the next one. When in doubt, when you first start the game, something that I felt was a really good tip was follow the flank or the lemming train, quote unquote, that has the most amount of tanks in it. You're not going to be able to defend the flank by yourself, and if there's just 2 or 3 of you, odds are you probably can't defend that either. So go on the side to make a big push, try to go and cap quickly, and force somebody to have to come back to you and adjust to your play style. But trying to have 3 or 4, maybe 5 of you defend a flank against 8 or 9 is just going to put you in a really bad position. You're not going to be able to do much to help the team because you're going to be outnumbered initially. So I don't want to say give up the flank completely, but be prepared to, especially when you first start, to follow the side that has the most amount of tanks in it. I think that was a good tip until you kind of learn the maps and learn the strengths and weaknesses of your tank. The eighth one, which I feel this is really big, and I just kind of learned that a few games ago, actually, despite the amount of games that I have, is when you first level up or unlock a tank. So let's say I bought this T20. Once I buy that, this tank is going to get preferential matchmaking for probably my first 10 battles. So something to keep in mind, preferential matchmaking is something like you see in the Super Pershing, where instead of being 8 to 10 for the matchmaking like it is in the patent, it's 8 to 9 here, as you can see here. That's the battle tier. That means this level 8 or tier 8 tank will only see tiers 8 and 9. It won't see tier 10, which is a big advantage when it comes to first moving to the tank. And what I was told is it helps you deal with being stock and the fact that you're going to be really, really weak when you first start in. Now keep in mind, if you're platooning with somebody else who's the same tier as you, like if you're a tier 8, or let's say this tier 4 to 6, and you're platooning with another tier 4, you're going to get 4 to 6. The preferential matchmaking is going to go out the window if you're platooning with somebody else. So tell them to go away for a few games until you get your bearings, and that's probably a perfect time to use free XP to spend on your modules so that your tank goes away from stock and instead becomes much more reliable in those battles and allows you time to kind of adjust and do more damage. Moving on to the last two. So there is some equipment, which again I didn't know until almost about 2,000 games in, that is free to move. So if you look here, a toolbox doesn't cost you any gold to move it from tank to tank, and the camouflage net is the same thing. It doesn't cost you anything to move it from tank to tank, and those are two of the more versatile things that you can move without having to hurt anything, as far as like costing you 10 gold to move. So those are two that are really, really big that I'd recommend investing in some once you get the credits to buy them, because they're pretty helpful generically speaking. The toolbox, especially if you're going to play medium or heavy tanks, it's always good to have some better repair speed, and that tends to be important across all tanks. The camouflage net, not as much, and I believe actually the binoculars are free also. Somebody can correct me on that, but again, not as useful as the other two, and across a ton of tanks, I should say, because you have to be stable when using it. So, but just keep those in mind. You can move those for free. It doesn't cost any gold. As you begin to level up early on, you're going to unlock a lot of different tanks and a lot of different tiers, so you can trade those on and off between tanks. And then the last thing is be patient. I know that's easier said than done, but it's better to have a gun in the fight that is there with 20 or 30 HP than to have a dead tank where you weren't able to really do anything. So when it comes to the game itself, be patient. There's a huge learning curve, probably more than any game I've ever played in my life. You got to learn the weak spots for all these different tanks. You got to remember them. You got to learn the maps. You've got to learn your specific tanks and what its strengths and weaknesses are. So there's a lot of different resources you can take advantage for that, but be patient. Especially when you're new, you want to be bringing up the rear. You don't want to be in the front. You got to learn the maps and learn your tank before you have time to really benefit your own team. So my recommendation is really try and be patient. Don't run out to the middle of the map like I first did when I got these tanks. I didn't know what was going on. Follow one side or the other and just try and ask some people, partner up with, there's Adopt a Tomato that's available on the World of Tanks Reddit, where people can come in and help you and give you some advice, especially for newer players. It's really good. But some of the things you can do to really help you is just go slow. Don't be the one in the front. Be there to support. When in doubt, shoot some tracks. Be patient in the game and be patient with learning the game. There's a ton of different resources you can have, a ton of different YouTube videos you can watch. But I've kind of already went over my time, so I'm going to end it there. But those are like 10 tips to start with, and then I'll be getting into more detail for battle mechanics of the crews and some other additional tips that I get more feedback from Reddit. So thank you guys very much. I appreciate you watching. I'll have some Darkest Dungeon content later this week, so look for that. And put out some more Tanks content probably over the next 2 weeks. Thanks.